Yeah, welcome back to Maxwell in the Morning. We have pleasure of having a guest who is a expert at why a company like Chevron would depart California. Can you figure that out? Let's see. We live in California, so we probably figured it out already. But his name is Jonathan Williams. He's the ALEC EVP of Policy and Chief Economist, American Radio Journal, and ALEC is the kind of the head name that they go under. Jonathan, are you there?
I am. Yes, greetings from the land of make-believe out here in Washington, D.C., although I suppose California might say the same.
You're actually in Washington, D.C.? Oh, my goodness. So do you sober up every morning, or do you just drink a lot of coffee?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a strange place. You know, Reagan always used to say Washington's an island surrounded by reality. So any chance I get a chance to be out of Washington is a good day and into real America.
Well, fortunately, you get to talk to real America from time to time. You wrote an article with a couple of people that I have great respect for. One comes onto my program fairly often. You wrote this Rich States, Poor States. Stephen Moore is a good friend, and he loves being on my program. Never had Art Laffer on.
Those two are phenomenal.
Oh, they're great.
You know, Arthur
they're
being
great.
a former California resident himself.
That's true. That's true. And isn't that where he made his association with Ronald Reagan and became part of his staff?
Indeed. So he moved to Tennessee as one of the no income tax states across the country and lives in Nashville today, building his business. And the Chevron decision is really interesting here, moving from San Ramon out to Houston. Just yet another shoe to fall when it comes to so many of this out-migration of businesses that I know you and your listeners have seen for many years. So I know it won't come as a surprise to you, but I think it's an instructive decision, and the headline has been very instructive because the CEO of Chevron, Mike Wirth, has been pretty honest about the fact that this was about some very key policy mistakes that California has made, and cost of living becoming too high, taxes and regulation being too high, and there's a lot of CEOs out there are afraid of their own shadow in these publicly traded companies and won't come out and publicly say why they leave high tax states and go to low tax states. Although we really kind of get it. It's not, rocket surgery, as Art Laffer likes to say. This is basic economics 101.
Right. Well, actually, we have a family that started in the oil business here locally, was tremendously successful. It's called Kenny Small Industries, or KSI. They have been in Bakersfield for a long time, or Kern County a long time. Employed a lot of people, but they made the decision to move their headquarters to North Dakota because it was going to save them millions of dollars every single year. Even the small companies maybe got it a little bit earlier than this, and a lot of them did it very quietly because when you've been in a community like Bakersfield and Kern County for such a long time, the last thing you want to do is say, "Well, see you later." But I understand why they did it. And I understand why Wirth made this decision to go there. But didn't they already have an awful large presence in Texas? I think it was even bigger than their presence here in California in terms of number of employees, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these oil and gas companies are obviously, multi-state efforts where the major operations are Permian Basin, down in Texas, and other big plays across the country like in North Dakota that you mentioned. But it just makes it easier then to take the final step and totally move the headquarters and all those executives to the other states. Of course, one of the other things, about that Texas is one of the 9 states that avoids personal income tax. So while it's good for the company and the bottom line and good for customers and shareholders of Chevron, it's also very good for those employees moving, and that they're not paying California's ridiculously high income tax rates on the personal side. They'll get to take advantage of Texas being one of the 9 no income tax states.
Well, the people that are going to be left here in California, I mean, they have a presence here in Kern County, although that presence is being diminished almost as we speak. So that it is going to benefit them to take the executives that are running the company and put them there. As far as revenue, though, what do they still have to report to California in terms of revenue? I mean, I know they have their any of the land that they own, they're going to pay property tax on, and the value of the oil underneath it becomes less and less because of the restrictions California has on pulling oil out of the ground. But in is it an advantage also for them to in terms of what California lost and what Texas gains?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, while there's still going to be tax revenue paid to the state of California, and it's, counties and cities, depending on where this business activity is happening, or clearly the severance tax implications of oil getting taken out of the ground or production activities, there will be a larger nexus there of the corporate profits and corporate activity, though, that will be able to be claimed in Texas versus California going forward. And Texas is a state that is won't be a surprise to you. Doesn't even have a traditional corporate income tax either. It has a little bit of a different kind of a business tax regime with very low stated rates, though. And so, I mean, that's going to definitely behoove the future of profitability of Chevron Company and its shareholders and customers going forward.
Well, being a shareholder here in California, and depending upon the revenues that are taxed and put into the coffers of California, California's not looking too good these days. We're kind of like last place when it comes to the amount of money they bring in versus the amount of money that they have to pay out, and they're currently looking at a deficit in the billions of dollars. That's just for this year, and next year looks even worse.
We've reported on that a little bit. It's a really interesting deterioration where you had Governor Newsom, I know, going around the country campaigning for others for office, and trumpeting the fact that California at the time was at least reporting what a nearly $100 billion budget surplus, and now that has not only just gone away, but now, as you point out, in the tens of billions of dollars of deficit, depending on whose estimates you currently take on that. But it kind of goes to the broader concern when you have, in the last 12 months, over 300,000 residents, Americans voting with their feet, leaving California and going to one of the other 49 states. That's just the last 12 months. And then you have these big corporate taxpayers like Chevron adding into that mix. And all of a sudden you run into the Laffer curve in economics, of course, which is, have high taxes and anti-business policies. And sooner or later, you're actually going to lose economic activity and revenue associated with that activity.
Well, and our other Achilles heel is the fact that we have a supermajority in the legislature. They have changed all of the rules as far as the elections are concerned. And if you look at the commission that was done with Carter and who was the Republican on the other side, when they came up with the commission saying, here are the things that you should do to make sure that there's no cheating in the election, California is the model for doing exactly what they said not to do. We don't have any hope for changing the people who are leading this state, because they have made it so that we can't stop the cheating. We just can't. So this is something that I think is going to help to put California into the doom loop that my good friend Steve Frank talks about. What is the I know what I wanted to say was the $100 billion that he said as a surplus. That really was manufactured because a lot of that money came from the federal government when they had all this extra money that they're handing out. Something called COVID happened, and that was artificial in the first place, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all knew, we kind of got the joke that this was going to be one-time money coming from the federal government. The Biden bucks that were sloshing around state capitals have produced, on paper, these surpluses that look good in the short term. But those of us that have seen this movie before and have been through the financial crisis and have seen how states reacted to that and how federal funds are really always short term and never free, by the way. There's always this demand from progressive elected officials to come out and lobby the federal government to tax us more so they can spend more money for the state and local governments. But let's not forget, those funds come with a lot of restrictions. And while the funds may run out, those maintenance of effort requirements and all the different regulations that come with the federal support do not run out. And they last far longer than the dollars will ever last. And the one thing we have seen now in this era now of $35 trillion plus of national debt, where the interest on the debt now is becoming as large as full functions of government, like the national security apparatus of America. We have to ask ourselves, kind of the painful question here is, how long can the federal government keep on with this trajectory? And I think the answer to that is pretty straightforward. It's not very long. And what do states and cities do in that eventuality that the federal dollars are going to dry up, and that spigot's going to be turned off.
You'd have to be crazy to want to be the president of this United States of America with those kinds of daunting problems that are, they're foundational. Most people can't even relate to the fact that we owe $35 trillion, and we're increasing that by $1 trillion almost every 100 days. But Donald Trump says he's got a plan. We have lots of oil in the United States of America. We'll get back to energy dominance. We'll start selling it to our friends so that we're not buying it from our enemies. We'll stop some of the aggressions that are going on in the world by isolating Iran and North Korea again, doing things like that. And I'd like you to comment on that. Is that realistic in terms of one of his arms of solving some of the problems we have? But also the other thing that happened was Elon Musk moved a lot of what he had out of California, but he finally removed the last part of it, and it was because of the social aspects of it that the legislature had passed a law here in California saying that if you have a child going to school and they want to change their pronouns, they want to change the name you call them, and they're thinking in terms of getting a sex change operation, that information would be withheld from their parents. And that was the reason Elon Musk said, okay, I'm done. I'm completely done with California.
Well, I'll tell you what, on the energy piece, I think, not only is it realistic, I think it's pretty likely that in a potential second Trump administration that we would see that return to American energy dominance that we did see, because it's happened once, right? I mean, we were a net exporter of energy. We saw record amounts of new projects underway, both on private and federal lands. Permitted by the Trump administration. And I think it's a key element to our future national security, where we've seen this progressive left-wing war on American energy. Some of the ugly roots of that, I think, go back to the CCP in China and to Russia and other adversaries around the globe that would love to see the U.S. weakened by not having affordable, reliable energy supplies. And so I think we absolutely owe it to ourselves, even if for no other economic reason, but we need to have that national security place to say we're going to reward our friends around the world. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that Americans have affordable, reliable energy. Yeah,
no doubt about it. Being in Washington, D.C., is there kind of an air there about what's going on with the election that is Kamala and Tim, I call him Where's Waldo Waltz, and I call her Kooky Kamala. Are there missteps and the things that they've done in the past, are those really going to come to light so that the American public makes a good decision here?
Well, I'll tell you what, it depends on the day that you ask, right? I mean, it seems like we've gone through several election cycles just in the last couple of weeks here. And I do think there's a lot of, obviously talk around Washington as to who the likely winner is going to be here this fall. I mean, we're just looking at objectively some of the records. I mean, having a ticket with California and Minnesota at the top of the ticket there, two states that have not extremely been governed well in recent years, just to put it nicely. And Governor Walz's track record there in Minnesota was some of the most extreme COVID lockdowns and allowing certainly the Twin Cities to burn, as we saw during the riots, and just so many, I think, liabilities. I think there is a kind of a growing consensus that it may not have been a wise choice for vice president nomination there from Kamala Harris. But, time will tell. I think we've got quite a few twists and turns to go, maybe an October surprise or two, I imagine, from both camps, and we shall see. I wouldn't put money either way dramatically at this point.
Yeah, you're probably right. ALEC stands for American Legislative Exchange Council. Explain to people what that's all about, Jonathan, because I want people to know where they can find out a little bit more about you, donate if they want, things like that.
So we're the nation's largest nonpartisan individual membership organization of state legislators and have been around for 50 years looking to create free market economic success across the state capitals, and believing very strongly the idea that we have these 50 laboratories of democracy. We can learn a lot from the states that are succeeding and also from the states that are not. So we've been around in a 501c3. We don't get involved in the political space, but just, care about what conservative free market policy looks like and what that means for hardworking taxpayers across the country. And, looking obviously to grow in California and states all across the country. Would, love to have your listeners check us out at ALEC.org and be involved with us with so many of these policy issues that we're working on.
Well, one of the ones that I'd love to see you work on is getting maybe a course in either junior high or high school that teaches these kids the benefits and the power of capitalism, because they
That's
certainly
so
get
needed. It's absolutely needed versus the kind of the indoctrination that we get from some of the government-run schools in parts of the country.
Well, I think that when you've got 95% of the people who are in the colleges espousing the Marxist way of living and communism's great. I was exposed to that when I was growing up. I didn't realize it, but I realize it now that that representation of communism, really sounded great. But nobody ever sat down and said, well, here's what capitalism is. This is what it's done. This is the reason that we have all the benefits that we have in our nation and in the world. We have, look at what air conditioning has done for everybody. This is a product of capitalism. And I just think
and you look at the flip side, it's exactly the opposite. Look at Venezuela and how these countries that have followed the socialist approach, how has that turned out for them?
Well, and how many hundreds of millions of people have died under communism? It's a stark difference, but they always have that answer of, well, we just haven't done it right yet. It's like, well, I don't want to be your experiment to find out how, what the right way of doing it is, because we'll end up being part of the group that doesn't make it. I just think it's important that we get into the educational system and start getting as young as we possibly can, the idea that capitalism is a good thing and it has done benefits for us as Americans. But that's a big hill, no doubt about it, big hill to climb.
It sure is. If there's been any kind of a lesson learned in recent years, though, and then I think it's been a positive that parents are paying more attention to their kids' education, whether they were in the forced lockdowns of schools and, looking over their shoulder and looking at their laptop and wondering what in the world are they being taught in some of these schools, and being more involved in their kids' education. I think that's a real positive. I think that's how we're going to start to turn the ship.
Let's hope so. Hey, Jonathan, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. Hope we can do this again in the future.
Absolutely. Great to join you.
Thank you so much.